Yo, what's up? This is Hyde. I thought I'd do a video for UFC 214, Cormier versus John Jones for the belt. Um, yeah, I know there's a lot of people now that are going to be wanting to get into watching some mixed martial arts. Conor McGregor going to be fighting Floyd Mayweather in boxing. It's going to bring loads of fans across to MMA. If any fans are thinking about they want to watch some MMA or some UFC, before Conor fights, this is going to be the main sort of card that's coming up, um, that you guys can watch. Uh, in all honesty, the reason I was going to do this video is just one of the best cards I've seen for a long time on the UFC. Kind of reminds me of like the old days when they used to just have the UFC, like I think it's like once a month. They would have like say UFC like 23, 24, 25, 26. They go on like once a month. Um, Now they have like FX, fight nights, loads of UFC most weekends anyway. Um, and this is a card where they've kind of gone back to the old. For me, they've kind of gone back to the old school. Loaded the main card with like fights which, on their own, could support a card. Like the main, not even just the main event. I mean, the whole main card. I think there's 5 fights on the main card. So I'm just gonna break down the card. If anybody wants to see a review of what they're going to tune in to watch, especially if they haven't seen much UFC or MMA. So the first fight on Fight Pass. So Fight Pass is like an app which you can pay for monthly, which I subscribe for. I barely use it, in all honesty. I do sometimes watch the Fight Pass prelims. I watch Ultimate Fighter, and I watch some of the old fights like Chuck Liddell, Anderson in the early days, that type of stuff. You can also watch old Pride fights on there, like all the Rampage Silver, all of like Fedor, all the old sort of Pride. If you haven't seen that stuff and you are into MMA, I mean, that was a whole different game. Like dudes just juicing up and being the shit out of each other. It's crazy. But so anyway, so this UFC 214 Jones versus Cormier. So the the UFC Fight Pass. The first fight on there is Josh Berkman versus Jude Dober. So I think that's how you say his name in the lightweight fight. I know Josh. Again, he's like an old school. I quite like Berkman. Um, he's a fighter I do like. He's been around for a long time. Lightweight division. I'm sure he used to fight welterweight. Back in the day, he was on Ultimate Fighter, like the reality TV show. He was on the second season. I think it was second or third season. Um, and he got into the UFC. I think he lost a few fights, got cut like I would say almost 10 years ago now, and he gradually worked his way back into the UFC. He's like an older fighter now. I think he's in his late 30s. He's got like a completely shaved head, which completely bald, which I actually think that's pretty cool. He's one of the dudes that I think like dudes who like lose their hair when you get older and that. If you look at him, you think actually it's pretty good. Just shave it off, embrace it. And he's also got beard. That's cool. um, but no, so yeah, I think from what I remember, they cut John Finch was in the UFC. Dana White cut him. There was a big like fuss about um, why did you cut Finch? He was a top contender in welterweight, even though he looked a cool dude, and he was quite good on camera, but his fights were fairly boring. A lot of wrestling fights can be boring like that, in all honesty, especially if you're going against a striker. Or GSP was, he was a bit more of a flamboyant type, but he was still wrestling. So when you had Finch versus GSP, you're always going to get that kind of background of a fight. Berkman, is similar fighter to that, in all honesty. But I kind of like the fact that he was in the UFC though, Ultimate Fighter, was some of the first season, come back. He was in World Series of Fighting. I'm not sure if he ever got a belt there. I don't think he did. But what I was going to say is when they released John Finch, there was a big fuss about it. He went to World Series of Fighting, fought Berkman, and Berkman tapped him. And then I remember Ariel interviewing Dana and saying, "Oh, what do you think about John Finch? Obviously got beat in the World Series of Fighting." And Dana couldn't remember Berkman's name. At which point, I remember Ariel saying, "Well, yeah, he used to fight for you," and he said, "Yeah, I know he is. I couldn't remember what his name was for that, for that instant." And I think Josh went on to win a couple more fights in World Series, and then they got him back into the UFC, which I thought was pretty cool. He must have been, it feels like he's been in a couple of years now, so it would have been mid-30s, I think, probably when he come back. which again, like, is pretty cool to. Unfortunately he's on a losing streak. I'm guessing if he loses in this fight, he probably will get cut. I mean, Dana, don't cut him, keep him in. He's a cool dude, Fans like him. If he's still willing to fight, he still turns out to fight. You don't have to. I think like a lot of fans now, we're not really aware of what people's record are. Like they could. I mean, Anderson's recent fights, apart from the last one, he had lost. On paper he had lost them, but they were still good fights, and he could have turned them around, especially the Bisping fight, even the DC fight, if that went on a couple more rounds. So I don't think fans really ever think like, oh, he's lost 3 fights, not good enough to fight in UFC. As long as they turn up and fight, I'd rather see them turn up and fight and lose, rather than guys who turn up just to win rather than fight. And one other thing about Burtman, I know I'm talking a lot about. I'm not going to talk this much about every fighter on the card. It's just he's opening the card, and I'm guessing, it could be one of the last times we're going to see him in UFC. But I remember there was a double KO, if I remember, from one of his fights early in the UFC. You can probably find it on YouTube. I think it might have been Ultimate Fighter, even. If I remember, I think he got someone into like a choke, and they kind of either he got knocked out or he got taken down and KO'd at the same time. Someone got choked out. It's one of these weird things where someone got choked out and KO'd at the same time. It's a weird thing. Or I think he might have got suplexed or taken down onto his head at the same time the guy was about to, it's great. Anyway, try and find it. It was worth watching. He's fighting Drew Dober, who I remember from Bellator, before Bellator was what it is now, when Bellator was just starting off, smaller promotion, a bit like Bama in the UK type of thing. I remember him from there. Again, he's a guy who I have seen fight a few times. I do quite like him. I'm not to say that I'm just completely for Josh in this fight. I'm not sure he's going to win. Both guys are similar of ability, I would say. Drew's 10 years younger, so. I also remember he was in Ultimate Fighter as well. I don't think he actually got into the house. I got a feeling he might have got beat in the preliminary rounds. I don't know. I'd have to check that, to be honest. It wasn't that long ago. Not as long as Burtman, definitely, but Drew Dober is another guy who, if I seen him, I would, there's a few guys in the UFC that I barely know their names or heard of, but Drew Dober I would actually take a point to watch this fight, to be honest. So I mean, it's a good opening fight. I'm not sure who would take it. I'm hoping either of the fighters don't get cut. I know Drew's got a bit of more success recently, so if Josh does defeat him, I'm guessing both will stay in the UFC, which is what I would prefer. But as long as they go out, like I said, I'm going to put on a show. That's all that matters. The second fight on the UFC Fight Pass is Shelton versus Brooks. So Jared Brooks, I've not seen a great deal of. I know he's got fairly decent record. I think it's his debut. I've never seen him fight. And Shelton, the only thing I can remember him, he was actually on the Ultimate Fighter recently, Benavidez, I think. Again, seemed like quite a cool athletic dude. I don't know much about either of the fighters. I think it would probably be a decent fight. Then you've got a women's strawweight fight, Karan versus, not sure how to say the other girl's name, Buddha maybe, I don't know. I've never heard of her. I'm not sure if it was, did I write down her? Yeah, okay, so I did notice that I sort of did a bit of research on her to see who either of these fighters were. It looks like Karan I actually have seen fight, because I've seen all of Felice Herrick's fights. Felice beat her, and so did Paige. So I have seen her fight. She's pretty game from what I can remember. Again, I don't know Alexandra. I don't know how that fight's going to go. But that's the UFC. Then you've got the preliminary card on FXX. Andre Philly versus Calvin Qatar. That Qatar, I've never heard of him. It's a featherweight fight. I've seen Philly fight a few times. Seems okay. Again, don't know much about that fight. Featherweight fighters, and the lighter weight fighters, I know when they first brought these weight classes into the UFC, I was still like old school at the time, and I was kind of thinking, who wants to watch dudes who weigh like 100, I mean, they got 125 pound, but like 135, 145 pound, who really, they had the lightweight 155, and at that time I thought that was as small as you want to go. Who wants to really see guys who are lighter than that fight? And I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but that's how I felt at the time. I don't now. Now I love these lower weight classes. I mean, again, Conor McGregor, a featherweight champion. Before he was even in the UFC, I was still, Uriah Faber. I was a big Uriah Faber fan and he's bantamweight. But yeah, so now they are more, they've become, I guess, is anything is just embrace the change, I guess. But the lightweight fighters now is, they're pretty cool. They got the next fight on that is again another featherweight fight. It seems like there is more of the lighter fights now than there ever is. If you think they only used to have the welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight, but now it seems like on the cards are full up of the guys who fight at featherweight, lightweight, bantamweights, even welterweight. I don't really know what that is, whether there's more fighters that fight at that weight class, or because people want to cut as much weight as possible because they feel like they're going to be fighting someone smaller, whether that's a mental thing, or because maybe they just want to cut down because they feel like they'll be bigger in that weight class. There is that side of it. Cerrone's fighting on the card who now, almost don't cut weight, just fights is, closer to what his day-to-day walking around weight is. So next featherweight is Ortega and Renato Monaco, I think is pronounced his name. I've seen both of those fight many times. I think they're ranked. I wrote down what their rankings were. Yeah, Ortega's 8th and Renato is 9th. Both on a good run. Should be a good fight. Whoever wins that's probably going to break into the top 5. Potentially might go on to be a title contender. I'm sure they'll both be around for a while. Both look very young. Then the next fight on there is a catchweight, 140 pounds. I don't know what his catchweight. I'm guessing Barao missed weight. I don't know. I could be wrong. If they were going to fight at 135, which I know Sterling can make, I thought Barao was moving up to 145 anyway. But I don't know what's going on with Barao's career recently. I remember a few years ago watching a press conference with Dana, and he was, Barao had been the champion. He'd been quite dominant. And almost Dana was like, he's the real deal, blah 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 blah. And I never was completely sold on him. I can't remember who it was now. I think it was TJ Dillashaw. I think took the belt off him, but it should be a good fight. Sterling is again an entertaining guy, a fighter I do like to watch. So that is 140. So I think Sterling fights at bantamweight and featherweight, so for him that's probably an easy weight to make, I would imagine. They both look pretty decent in the weigh-ins. Barao, being an ex-champion, you'd think he would potentially have the edge on Sterling, but Sterling is a decent fighter. There's no messing. He's fought some tough dudes. It won't be an easy fight for either of them. Barao's going to be tough for anyone. Whether he fights at each of the weight classes, he's going to be a tough fight. You don't get to be the UFC champion and not be a tough fight for anyone. It should be a good fight. It's a fight that probably could have been on the main card, but I guess maybe catchweight kind of don't really know whether either of them is going to push in what division. I don't know, but standalone it should be a good fight. And then you've got the prelim card, the main fight on that with I don't know how they pronounce it now, their highlight fight or whatever. Ricardo Lamas versus Jason Knight. I've seen Jason Knight fight a few times, and I don't know a great deal about him in all honesty. I do watch, like I said, like guys that will be on the featherweight cards if they're on like a UFC Fox or Fight Night. Again, I wouldn't always watch the prelims. There's a lot of UFC now. They give the fans a lot of stuff to watch. If there's fighters that I really do follow, I will watch the prelims on those type of cards. Obviously, we're from the UK. It's late at night that this shit's on. So Lamas has been one of the top dudes for a long time. He's a good wrestler. He's ranked 3rd in that division in featherweight. That's obviously not including Conor, as they made Conor vacate the belt as he wasn't going to defend it. I think Conor could go back and whip anyone's ass in that, and I still think he can make the weight class, even though he fought at 170. I still think if he came back to the UFC and they gave him an opportunity to fight for the belt, he would make the weight. As much as he is kind of like almost a celebrity now, and his fame, he's always stayed dedicated to the game, and that's what makes him what he is. Lamas did a video actually a few years back when Conor was sort of coming onto the scene, and he was getting a lot more publicity than a lot of the guys that was in the featherweight division. I think at a way that those guys, like I said, you had Faber back in the day, and so many other guys who promoted that division, and Jose Aldo had been a champion for a long time. I don't think he was, apart from in Brazil, I don't think he was which a bit like here as I was thinking I'm hating on Aldo, but I'm not. I don't think it was a massive kind of fan base for the guy at the time. I'm not comparing him. You can't compare anyone to Conor McGregor. And when Anderson Silva in his prime, I mean, Chuck Liddell, I mean, John Jones is on the card, you know, before he started like being a bit of a dick. He had a massive fan base, you know, but you know, McGregor's just took it to a whole different level. So it's difficult to compare anyone to him. But and I'm not comparing Lamas's fan base, but I'm just saying he is a person who's been around, you know, in that division for a long time. Top, you know, top contender. Don't. There's no joke. Ranked number 3rd. I think he's been in the top 5 for many years now. He wanted to fight McGregor. He did a video. If you want to search something on YouTube, check it out. I'm guessing it's on YouTube. Ricardo Lamas, you know, he sort of dresses up as Conor McGregor and takes the piss saying that the UFC are protecting him. They won't let him fight any wrestlers. He went on to obviously fight. What's the guy's name? Another guy from Alpha Male. I think it was Chad Mendes. Yeah, he went on to fight Chad Mendes for the interim belt. I think when Aldo pulled out from their fight. You know, he smoked him. Whether Mendes had a full fight camp in that, I don't think he did. But I mean, the difference in, you know, reach, you know, stand up was. I mean, Mendes did well. He held him down for a while, but as soon as Conor got up, he finished him. I don't think it would have been any different for Lamas. I think Lamas has even fought Mendes. I mean, as a fight I would have watched, I think they might have fought. I think Mendes might have beat Lamas. I can't remember. Might have got that wrong. Sorry if I have. I know Lamas fought for the belt. I know Mendes fought for the belt. So they're top dudes. So that should be a good fight. You know, that's the prelims over. And then on to the main card. I mean, the main card is, you know, that's why I'm doing this video. Like, I would normally sort of, I know I'm not here to promote the UFC or whatever, but I'm thinking if guys want to get into watching MMA, especially because of this McGregor fight coming up, this is, you know, this is the card to watch. You know, this main card is crazy. There's like, you know, the top. I'm gonna say like the top. All 5 fights could headline other cards. I'm not saying they could headline a UFC pay-per-view. I mean, Maia versus that. I can't remember say his name now. Ozdemir. That probably couldn't headline a pay-per-view, but the other fights, I'd imagine could. Not that Woodley and Maia would be the best pay-per-view, but you know, it's in a day for a welterweight championship. So yeah, so the first fight on there is the light heavyweight bout. Jimmy Manuwa, guy from the UK, followed him for a while. I'm not a huge fan of him, no more than a lot of the other guys I like. But you know, he knocks people out. He's a big, tough dude. He's athletic as fuck. The other guy, Vulcan, he's a good, tough guy. I've seen him fight a few times. They're both ranked pretty high. I would think whoever. I mean, I remember like seeing an interview with Chael Sonnen. He fought Anderson Silva for the middleweight belt, and then pretty soon after he got to fight John Jones for the light heavyweight championship. And there was a lot of people that were not happy about the way it was done. But I remember seeing an interview with Chael, and he said, you know, if you want to get a fight against the champion, put yourself onto the card that the champion's fighting on, win your fight, make sure you're at the top of the division, call him out. I'm guessing that's what Jimmy's going to do. If Jimmy can KO Vulcan, you know, Vulcan, I never say the guy's name, you know, Jimmy has got to be next in line. Daniel Cormier saying if he beats John Jones, they'll fight again after. In all honesty, if Daniel Cormier could beat John Jones, which I don't think is going to happen, I wouldn't want to see the fight straight away again. There's been a massive build up to this, and there's so much bad blood. To think that they could fight and then repeat it again within like 4 or 5, 6 months, whatever, I think it would be a bad thing to do. I mean, you're saying if Cormier could beat John Jones, I never could see this happening, but if he did, there is a possibility that he could grind him out, and maybe Jones has, you know, been out of the game a while. He didn't look great against OSP, but you know, I mean, God, the guy is like, when you're thinking like some of the best fighters who've ever been in a game, he's up there. So, I mean, Manuel, that's what I'm saying. He knocks him out. He's got to call out the winner of that belt. You know, he's got to get on the mic, call it out. I know he's good on the mic. He's called him out before. He didn't get it. He got offered to Daniel Cormier, who wanted Jones. I guess he's the champion. Dana let him have Jones. But I think if Jimmy gets a good win, he's got to be, you know, he's in contention anyway, but he's got to be the winner of the light heavyweight. Whoever wins the belt next got to fight Jimmy if he wins. The fight after that is the welterweight fight. I mean, Robbie Lawler and Cerrone. That's two fans' favourite fighters there. I mean, you got Robbie Lawler, who's about as tough as they come. I mean, he's not. I mean, he's welterweight, so he don't look as, you know, intimidating as someone like, say, the heavyweights or light heavyweights. But he is a tough motherfucker. You know, he's tough as anyone in the UFC. I mean, he is old school. I said Josh Brickman's kind of old school because he was from the early Ultimate Fighters, but I mean, Robbie is from like before that, from like back in the day when the UFC first was out, when the rules were changed. I would say changed before they were so. When there was more leniency on what you could get away with, I should say. You know, in the early UFCs, Robbie, you know, he was around then. I think, I mean, when Robbie won the belt, it was one of those things where it was like, you know, and I'm not a massive Robbie Lawler fan. I think anybody who loves fighting will like Robbie Lawler because, you know, he's a fighter. At the end of the day, he didn't go out to fucking win for points or outscore someone or hold someone down. He just goes out to fucking fight, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so anybody who likes fighting, who the old school spirit of the UFC and MMA is gonna like Robbie. Um, yeah, so he sort of was in the early days. He got cut from the UFC, or he might have left the UFC. Maybe he didn't get cut. That might be wrong, but he was away for a while. I know he was in Strikeforce. Come back to the UFC and ended up getting the belt. Like after like a long long time since his first fighting like the early days, like when I'm saying like when Chuck wasn't even a champion back, like, you know, the early days, like I think Randy was probably a champion, but I don't know what a welterweight champion would have been. um Maybe like Matt Hughes, maybe Matt Hughes' era. I probably think it was Hughes. So yeah, anyway, Robbie Lawler, and he's fighting Cowboy again. I mean, Cowboy is a fan's favorite. You know, this fight could headline a card in my opinion, just because it's not for a bout. I'm not saying it could definitely headline a pay-per-view, because generally the pay-per-views are for belts, but any other card, any other fight night, UFC, live on Fox or any of that, whatever fight they call it, this could be a fight to headline any of those cards. That's what I'm saying. This card is crazy, and this is like the fourth fight from the main card. Robbie Lawler and Cerrone is a fight that has been wanting to happen for a long time. I think Cowboy wants to fight Lawler because he knows that he'll brawl with him. You know, Robbie, I don't give the impression that he massively wants to fight Cowboy. I think he just don't give a fuck. He just wants to fight. Probably work his way back up to getting into title contention. Obviously, if GSP comes back, that's probably going to knock him down a peg or two. I didn't mean like ability wise. I mean just because GSP will come back and probably get whatever he asks for. I don't know who's going to win that. I mean, if I had to bet on it, I probably would go for Robbie. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's much more durable than Cerrone. However, Cerrone is tough, man. I mean, he's a lightweight who just thought, fuck it, I'm going to fight at welterweight, you know, and he's done good, man. I think they're both ranked in probably. I would say. I mean, I don't know if I took the rankings down. I don't know if I wrote it down. Probably. Yeah, Lawler's 3 and Cowboy's 6. Now I know Cowboy. I mean, he's 6 in the welterweight. I don't know what he was in the lightweight when he left, but he was in the top few. So, you know, that's a good fight if you're going to tune in for, you know, to hit the main card. That's going to be something that's going to really sort of set up the rest of the fights. I mean, it should be like a bloodbath, really. Cerrone's going to stand up and hit him with leg kicks. You know, he's striking. His Muay Thai is, you know, second to none. He's a great striker. He's a cool dude. You know, I'm a fan of both fighters. Robbie's a cool dude, man. He just, you know, just somebody who turns up and wants to brawl. Old school. I mean, they don't make him like that now. The fighters don't come like that. They're too worried about getting cut. Too worried about losing, and too worried about going for the win rather than the finish. Which, you know, it's easy for me to say that Saturday. My livelihood doesn't depend on the income from fighting and what you're going to do for it. So it's easy to sit here and say, yeah, fuck it. If I was in UFC, I would just like go and brawl and get knocked out, and who gives a fuck? But you know, it's not reality. So, but these two guys are from that. You know, they're probably both made. You know, so but they are from the old school. Cowboy and Robbie Lawler. Like I said, I'd probably go for Lawler if I was going to bet on it. Lawler's also a fairly decent wrestler. I mean, I'm sure Cowboy is as well. I've not really seen him do a great deal of it. I mean, I'm sure they're both obviously trained in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but I'm guessing it's going to be a stand-up fight. I hope, I mean, if it's anything like the Lawler and Rory McDonald fight, you know, you're in for a treat. You know, but the pay-per-view will be worth it just for that fight. You know, let alone what else comes after that. But it's cool. I didn't even know they were on the card until like maybe last week. I seen something about them, and I was thinking, oh yeah, that's cool. You know, will that be on like some like event coming up? You know, in a few weeks, I'll make sure I watch it. And I was like, fuck, you know, it's on the main card. It's crazy. So yeah, that's cool. Next fight, women's featherweight championship. After fucking Amanda Ray, whatever her fucking name was, won it against Holly Holm after doing all the cheap shots. I didn't appreciate that fight. I'm not a massive Holly Holm fan, not really. she knocked out Rousey. That was brutal. But I was a Rousey fan, in all honesty. I don't think she should have come back to Fort Nunes. That was absolutely crazy. Should have come back, worked some of the other girls through, which she would have won, and then potentially fought Nunes and would not have tried to stand up and strike her. Would have done whatever it took to get into a clinch and judo throw, as what got her there in the first place. I think women become so scared to fight Rousey that they didn't want to. They were so scared to get engaged in like wrestling or takedown or whatever you want to call it. I guess it was judo. That their striking would almost be put off it, and she fought girls that weren't of the striking level of Nunes. She was fighting Misha, who obviously went on to beat Holm, and Misha is, she's no joke. I was a huge Misha Tate fan, but she's pretty hot. So, but I digress. So Cyborg is fighting Tonya Evinger. Now Tonya Evinger, not many people's going to know of her, especially if they're just UFC fans or if they're new to sport. I've known her for a while. Invicta champion, she's a beast. I remember trying out for the Ultimate Fighter and she didn't get through, which I was surprised with. She went back to Invicta and she won. I don't remember getting beat for a long time now. It's like, what is it now? It's like 2017. I reckon at least. I could be wrong. I probably should check this, but I don't remember getting beat for a good few years, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. It's almost went on the way, and she said it's like a super fight, which is. The Invicta champion. She's not the featherweight champion from Invicta. The featherweight champion couldn't make the fight, so they moved the bantamweight champion up to fight Cyborg. In a way, it could be looked at like sending lambs to the slaughter, but she's no joke. If she was in UFC, she would be a top contender. Could she beat Nunes? I don't know. The UFC is a more professional than Invicta. She looks. Don't get me wrong. If she went to UFC, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she wouldn't beat the top. She'd be in the top 4 fighters. I think she could potentially go on to beat anyone in that division. Do I think she can beat Cyborg? God. Cyborg's been the best fighter. I was a Carano fan. Now this is like going back. You can see Strikeforce before women were ever even thought of in the UFC, before Rousey ever fought. And I was a Carano. I liked Carano. Again, if you Google Gina Carano, you'll probably you can see why. She's like she's hot. She's good kickboxer. She always come across like pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? She fought Cyborg. I'd never heard of Cyborg. I don't think Cyborg would win. But I reckon I was wrong. And that's the thing. She's one of the women you just come from nowhere and you see her fighting. Like, wow. She destroys. She's a fucking destroyer. The girl who was the champion in the UFC pretty much gave the belt up rather than fight Cyborg. She won the belt off Holm, who's no joke. Holm is a top fighter. To take that fight alone, you're fighting one of the top female fighters in the world, and that shows you the level that Cyborg is. That she just bottled that fight. Whatever she says is bullshit. You can just tell by some people. As soon as Rogan mentioned Cyborg, she started saying about her hand. Next thing you know, she don't want to fight at the featherweight division anymore. She wants to go back to bantamweight. I don't blame her. Cyborg would have fucking destroyed her. But so Cyborg's fighting Tonya. Like I said, I think Cyborg's the greatest female fighter ever. I was a huge Rousey fan. I think Rousey dodged her. I think Dana worked it that she dodged her, and all they would ever say was Rousey's the 135 champion. If Cyborg wants to fight Rousey, she should get to 135. I think Cyborg could have fought at 140 back then. I think Rousey could have fought at 140. I know Rousey fought at 145 many times in Strikeforce. In judo, she'd fought at that weight. And I know Rousey also cut quite a lot of weight to get down to 135. That was a difference between her and Misha that I did notice at a time where Misha, in that period of time, was a lot physically smaller, where she wasn't cutting as much weight. And Rousey, when they would go in, could almost manhandle her at some point. And like I said, Misha was one of the best fighters around. If Rousey was number 1 for that period, not including Cyborg, Misha was definitely number 2. So again, this is a fight that could headline a pay-per-view, in my opinion. Cyborg's got a massive fan base. Once she becomes the champion, that's only going to get more. UFC should have promoted her better in the past. They never should have had the belt with Holm and Jaramandier, whatever fucking name is, without Cyborg. They should have just I know it's shit to cancel the event. I know when John Jones done it in the past, when they cancelled that event, it was fucking shit. But they should have just been that event off, because it makes a mockery of bringing that championship belt in and Cyborg not fighting for it. She waited so long to get in the UFC. There's been so much like bad blood between what feels like it's been between her and UFC and her and Dana White. They seem fine now. I mean, she's a money machine what she's going to bring into them, especially the Brazilian following. They're going to have the greatest female fighter. You know, if she wins the belt, they're going to have the greatest female fighter. There's no question in it, and she'll be the greatest female fighter ever walked the planet. You know, she is a beast. Her Muay Thai, her physique. You know, I'm not going to touch on, you know, past shit about her physique and that. She's a beast. At the end of the day, you go into the fight, you get tested, you're clean, you fight. You know, that's within the rules. At that time, Tonya's no pushover, and I hope that she puts up a fight. She's a tough girl. You know, she's going to get into the UFC. I don't see her staying in the featherweight division of UFC. I'm not sure what happens now, whether she goes back to Invicta and she can defend her bantamweight belt, or whether she goes to UFC in the bantamweight division. She'd be crazy to stay in the featherweight division. If she wins the belt, I mean, it'd be a huge upset. I'm guessing. I don't know what happened to Cyborg. If Cyborg lost that fight, she's so kind of unpredictable in her kind of ways. I wouldn't be surprised even if she did something like just retired from the sport, or just binned off the UFC altogether, went to Bellator, did something crazy to get released or whatever. Obviously, she'd waited a long time for this. You know, fans of women's MMA or fans of Cyborg waited a long time for this. I wanted to always see Cyborg versus Rousey. I thought when Rousey was champion, they should have made a catchweight fight at that time. It would have been a huge fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, all of Rousey's fights were huge back then. I mean, like Cyborg, I always thought would have won, and she's a better fighter in the whole package, but she's nowhere near as marketable as what Rousey was. I mean, Rousey pretty much single-handedly brought the women's into UFC. But at that time, I think if she would have beat Holm, they could have pushed the Cyborg fight then. I don't think Rousey would have been keen to fight her, but I think if you would have, at this time when McGregor started to really bring money into the UFC, if they offered her potentially some type of money like that to make a catchweight fight, I mean, Cyborg would have been the 145 champion of Invicta. Rousey would have stayed the 135 champion of UFC, and they probably could have fought at 140. I know, don't get me wrong, I know Cyborg doesn't like cutting to 140. I've seen the videos. I've seen her fight at 140. But I think for the money, for fighting Rousey, she would have made the cut. She would have made it work. It would have been tough. You know, it would have been. Don't get me wrong. Rousey's not going to be easy just because of her last couple of fights. Rousey's not easy for no one. You get Rousey properly trained, coming in with a proper game plan. She's tough. I mean, her judo is second to none. She's also tough. She's a tough girl. Cyborg is just different level. Onto the welterweight fight on the card. Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia. Not a fan of either of them in all honesty. Tyron, his personality is strange. I'm not going to touch on the sort of stuff that he says because I know it's kind of like controversial, but I don't believe any of that bullshit. He's obviously got a good knockout fighter. He's a good wrestler. Damian Maia, again, he's one of the only guys around who kind of has that single style anymore. I mean, there is some guys, obviously, who have more of like Wonder Boy. What I'm trying to say is he's one of the only guys who really just does jiu-jitsu anymore. You're not going to get many young guys coming in now with that background who just mainly come from... That's not to say he's not good at striking, he's good at wrestling, yes he is. But generally he sort of goes back to his roots and concentrates on like what he's good at in his jiu-jitsu. You don't get many fighters now that come through now that are that single sort of developed skill, because everybody trains mixed martial arts rather than just coming from a backgrounds now as much as they used to. So he's kind of like a flashback to the old days in a way, which some people think is cool. It's like Hoist Gracie, I guess, but I don't think... I remember his fight with Anderson Silva for the belt. It was disgraceful. Not to say that was totally his fault, but he gets his result. He's the number one ranked dude. There's a reason for that, and Tyron's a champion. There's a reason for that. They're the best two in the division. That's the way it is. I'm not a fan of either. I probably can't see Damien submitting Tyron. In all honesty, I feel Tyron's just too athletic for him. But then I've said that many times about Maia in other fights, and he's pulled it off. So good, I don't know. I think Woodley actually sticks to game plans a lot more than he's credited. If you look at the Wonderboy fights, compared to how he fought previously to that, you can see he's obviously dedicated to sticking to the game plan. He's quite an intelligent fighter. He don't come across that, but he obviously is. He didn't stand up and engage in any. Even when he was getting tagged, he didn't really engage coming back. He still kept to his game plan, kept to what he was doing, and he edged out those 2 results. So that leaves me alone that he has got a champion mentality, and I think he probably would get Maia. Saying that, obviously, you get caught in a choke, or you get sort of your arm or something, and you're going to tap. But I would go for Woodley over that one. I wouldn't be surprised if Maia caught him. That's probably one of the fights on the division I'm not massively sold by on the card. Just as a fan, I'm not a massive fan of either. I mean, Tyron has got some good KOs. I don't know if he's obviously he could knock out Maia easily. Maia's stand-up is poor, in all honesty, at that standard. I'm not saying he's poor, in general, but you're talking like the top guys in the division. It's not great. Not that Tyron's a great stand-up fighter, but he's got power, man. He's an athlete. And Maia's like technical ability, jiu-jitsu. It's interesting, I guess. Interesting matchup. On to the light heavyweight champion then. So Daniel Cormier fighting John Jones. John Jones probably it's difficult to say in it because some people say John Jones is the greatest fighter ever. Some people say Anderson. Go on to a lot of other fighters. I'm not going to start listing who other people think are the best fighters, but those 2 do get mentioned quite a lot. They're both fighting at the same time, that's why I just kind of bring them up. And they both fought Daniel Cormier. So John Jones, Cormier, I mean, bad blood. You want to watch videos, go back and watch I won't worry about watching the embedded so much. If you want to just watch the sort of promos that they've done, you get a sort of grip of what John Jones has gone through, what Daniel Cormier has gone through. I say that because John Jones kind of brought a lot of stuff on himself, but it affected Daniel Cormier in a way of it seems like it mentally affected him. In all honesty, that he's become obsessed with fighting John Jones because he got beat by him, and then they were meant to fight and they didn't fight. I guess out of the 2, I'm a John Jones fan over Cormier. That's I know Cormier probably hears that type of shit and can't sort of comprehend why people would prefer John Jones over him because of John Jones's past, what he's done. The card which he refused to fight on, all the personal stuff which I'm not going to touch on. If anybody wants to see that shit, it's all over the internet. We all make fucking bad decisions in our life and go for it, but they get magnified when you're in that limelight. He's still only a young dude. Daniel Cormier just comes across too intense for me. He's too intense, too personal. It's a hard person I can kind of kind of follow as a fan. Jones is quite easy to follow, I guess, because of his style. Cormier is tough guy. He's a good grinder. I guess he's going to go in and think for 5 rounds he's going to get on top of John Jones, grind him out, hold him out. Maybe he might even ground and pound and finish him. I'll be shocked if he does. And then fighting anything that I've been a fan of mixed martial arts, boxing, kickboxing for a long time. You've seen a lot of crazy shit, so anything could definitely happen. John Jones, I just feel he's just too good a mixed martial artist for Daniel Cormier. And I think in all honesty, I think Cormier kind of knows that, and that's why he's so sort of personally engaged in this battle, and why he's so intense, and why it feels like Cormier has all this pressure on him because he's put the pressure on himself. And I think part of that is because he probably deep inside knows the truth. He goes back to the steroid stuff about John Jones. Do I think John Jones is on steroids his whole career? What Daniel's coming saying? No, I don't. That's only my personal opinion. If you look at his body, it looks probably the best now it has ever done, and he's definitely clean now. Saying that, there was a lot of shit about DC being in a bad shape and overweight. If you look in the weightings, he actually don't look that bad. I mean, it's just his body size. He's obviously got a genetic different build-up than John Jones, who's a lot more athletic and taller. But Daniel Cormier looks, he's got quite a lot of muscle mass on his body. So he's obviously got a higher fat content, and it just didn't look as aesthetically pleasing, I guess, as John Jones potentially if that's what he goes on about. But that's obviously something to get in his head. I actually do. I think Daniel Cormier looks exactly in fairly decent shape, especially because that's something. He doesn't look out of shape, and that's the way he's always looked his whole fighting career. Never really, I've always looked at him and thought he's someone who gasses. Anderson gave him a good body kick. Look, he's going to fucking gas then. But luckily for him, the fight was finished. It was only 3 rounds. John Jones is he's such a technical fighter, and the way he fights as well is very intelligent. When he fought Cormier the first time, I almost feel like to prove a point, he actually wrestled with him and did what Cormier said he was going to do back to him. Didn't even go to his flamboyant striking style that I've seen him do many times. Now, whether that was just Jones's game plan because he felt that was the best way to get out of Cormier because he wasn't putting himself in a vulnerable position to be getting taken down and mounted, potentially that is it. Another side of it is because he actually wanted to prove that he could beat him in his own style. Either way, I wouldn't be surprised with John Jones. God knows what's going on in that guy's head after time. He looks phenomenal shape. He looks mentally ready for it. Again, when he walked out, I was for the weigh-ins. I kind of the way he was almost like so pleased to be back and stuff. I kind of felt like that's not. It's with all that going on in your head coming up to a fight. I don't think that's a good thing. You just stay calm, stay level-headed, rather than getting emotionally attached to the occasion rather than the fight. And I feel like John Jones was like that, which I've not really seen him in that way greatly before. But then Cormier looks like, again, he's completely going into a fight with personal issues for himself and his feelings towards John Jones, which again is not the right mental state to be in. It should be a good fight. Both guys are going to want to go in and destroy each other. I don't think they'll start fast because 5-round fight, and I guess there's so much on the line for both of them. I don't imagine they're going to go in and try and just kill each other straight away and knock each other head off, and it's going to be early finish. Could be. Jones could catch him. Cormier didn't get many KOs. Not to say he's not a decent striker, he is. He's not on the same level technically wise as John Jones. He didn't have the reach of John Jones. But if I had to go with it, I'd have to go with Jones. He's been out of the game for a long time, and Cormier's got a better chance now as he's going to have to beat him. Cormier's a lot older than Jones. I just don't, I hope it's a fairly good fight. I'm not a massive John Jones fan by any shape of imagination. I'm not a DC fan whatsoever. I don't dislike the guy, not one bit. I'm sort of admire what he's done, and yeah, his record is great. And especially he's like someone who's got the best out of their ability and best out of their natural sort of genetic genes that they've got. He's maximized his potential to what he can do, and I kind of admire that in a way. Where John Jones is he's got all this natural potential, and he's probably not even reached where he could go. Generally hard work does outbeat talent. So for that respect, you'd go for Cormier, but I think people would be underestimating Jones to think he hasn't trained and he hasn't, done as much hard work as Cormier, because I think he has. In the past, he's maybe just made bad decisions as a young man, with loads of money chucked at you and you're the champion of the world. People mention that you can be the greatest fighter of all time, and he's so much bigger than Daniel Cormier. Mentally, when they're staring at each other like that, I can only imagine that has a massive edge on John Jones. Daniel Cormier is going to say it done, and I feel like Cormier a lot of the time is when he's saying stuff to John Jones, he's saying it to himself, because I feel like even though he'll say something negative about John Jones and why he's better than him in some respect, and I feel like the way he's saying it is he's almost telling himself that story rather than actually telling it to John Jones, because he feels like he needs to tell himself that. I believe he believes he can win. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, he does. He's a champion of the fucking world. But I think John Jones will defeat him. I don't know if it'll go to decision. The last fight went to decision. I think John Jones could finish him, in all honesty. It's just whether he will, because there's so much on the line for Jones. The thing is, Cormier's gone around saying if he beats John Jones, now he'd be the greatest light heavyweight of all time, and blah blah blah. So, and John Jones obviously wants to be the greatest fighter of all time. So if Cormier beats him, I guess it does put like a mark on his card at that point, and I guess people would then, out of the two, if they were going to mention him and Anderson, would probably then sway towards Anderson. Not that I probably think in reality people say shit like that, but who gives a fuck what people think about who's the greater or whatever? I mean, it's just a fight. You're just getting there to fucking fight, you know. Get paid, get laid. But anyway, so yeah, it should be a cool card. Worth investing the money in, especially if you're in the UK. You've got to step a bit late, but it should be good. You know, people out there. I'm just giving a video out there, just saying this is, you know, a lot of good shit going on the card. A lot of good fights, interesting dudes. Guys like fights that match up well, that should be good bros. Worth watching, just for like the dudes who are just like casual fans who want to see what, you know, even if they want to just see like what McGregor competes in, what's going on. Obviously, the UFC fans don't need to watch this video; they know. You know, this card is sick. You know, John Jones and Daniel Cormier. Anyway, I'd watch it anyway. I'd watch probably the whole main fucking card just for that fight, regardless who was fighting. And then you see they got like Cyborg fighting for the championship. You got Robbie Lawler, Cerrone. It's just like wow, you know. And then you got like the other belt on there with Woodley and Maia. Yeah, well worth putting. A good card that's been put together. A treat for us, really. So it'll be interesting. I can't wait for the main card. I hope it goes on a few rounds. I hope it's not over soon. I don't think it. I can't see it being over. I mean, Jones could catch him with some spinning elbow or something, but flying knee. You know, pull off a few of them. But yeah, so you know, tune in, hook it up. Should be worth watching. So, cruise to peace.